In September 2025, AI company Anthropic detected attempted cyber-espionage by Chinese hackers who used Claude to carry out most of their attack campaign. Anthropic quickly disrupted the majority of attempts, but signaled that the cybersecurity risks of agentic AI will only increase. Another important issue to note is that Anthropic's report was not co-authored or linked to any external threat intelligence body. AI companies cannot be both risk analysts and policy advocates for their own products. The regulatory vacuum opens the door for private companies to preempt and further fragment AI standards and practices with their own prescriptions. Third-party verification mechanisms are irreplaceable in domains where safety can come into conflict with corporate advocacy. US policymakers should place more importance and attention on self-regulatory organizations and federally funded research and development centers, and they should model AI safety evaluations after those of non-profit safety institutes in other industries. So, how did Chinese hackers use AI to carry out their massive cyber-espionage campaign? What does this say about how AI threat intelligence is conducted, and what are the issues with this? Welcome to Bottom Line Upfront. Today is Sunday, November 30th, 2025. I'm Noah Tan, and this is BLUF number 4. When it comes to AI safety, tech companies can't have their cake and eat it too. In Anthropic's policy report, the company emphasized that its AI agent Claude was able to carry out 80 to 90% of the cyber attack autonomously. The campaign followed 5 steps. First, the hackers identified around 30 high-value targets, which encompass large tech companies, financial institutions, chemical manufacturing corporations, and government organizations. Second, they fed Claude an attack framework that would guide the model to autonomously infiltrate each system. Third, hackers broke down the attack into small and seemingly innocent commands. Usually, AI agents have safeguards that will prevent them from directly executing or entertaining malicious actions. However, they were able to jailbreak Claude by stringing benign commands together to form an attack process in aggregate. Fourth, Claude tested security vulnerabilities and updated its exploit code to evolve and eventually acquire sensitive data. And finally, Claude output the harvested data and credentials to the hackers in a nice and neat documentation, which they could then use to carry out ransomware demands, distributed denial of service attacks, and data exfil operations. So what did Anthropic conclude from this operation? Well, there were 2 main lessons that Anthropic documented in their report: a warning and a recommendation. First, the company warned that the continued development of agentic AI, or systems that can autonomously pursue a goal by deciding and acting largely from themselves, will significantly lower the technical barrier for conducting malicious cyber operations. Anthropic called this vibe hacking. In Anthropic's own words, quote, less experienced and resourced groups can now potentially perform large-scale attacks of this nature. Second, Anthropic argued that agentic AI tools like Claude should continue to be developed, because as cyber attacks get more accessible and advanced, they will require commensurate or better AI defensive measures to counter such attempts. The company ended by recommending that companies and their security teams experiment with AI for cyber defense, detection systems, and AI safeguards. This report not only highlights the increasing safety risks of agentic AI systems, but it also exposes the inherent knowledge gap between tech companies' threat evaluations and the general public. You're probably wondering, well, what's the big deal if AI companies do their own threat intelligence? Well, there are 2 main issues. First, AI companies have an information asymmetry. A California report on AI frontier policy from June 2025 sums this issue up perfectly by saying, quote, when industries with incentives to promote particular products possess privileged information about risks while maintaining opacity about their internal research, the resulting information asymmetry undermines effective regulation and public welfare. So just think back to a time in elementary school when you were instructed to grade your own quiz. not even mentioning the natural incentives for you to distort or stretch your answer to give yourself a better grade. Imagine now if I gave you some latitude to determine what constituted a wrong answer. Relying on Anthropic's own threat assessments of Claude essentially creates a principal-agent issue, where AI safety organizations and government regulators give broad AI safety goals and expect private companies to conduct risk analysis with sufficient robustness. There are existing examples to this. In the pharmaceutical industry, regulators and outside researchers often rely on company-provided data they cannot fully replicate, especially for conclusions in industry trials. Funding from and ties to pharmaceutical companies were associated with more biased and favorable reporting on industry trials. In the tobacco industry, internal company research found evidence that smoking caused harmful health effects, but tobacco companies undermined these findings for years until the first labeling requirement was enacted through legislation more than a decade later. Second, there is a tension between AI companies' roles as risk analysts and policy advocates. Even the most well-intentioned firms must walk a tightrope between assessing the risks associated with their products and pushing for the success and future of their company. And sometimes, it's not just about how intrinsically accurate warnings or information may be, it's also about where it comes from that drives public trust. The public tends to trust evaluations and information that comes from transparent public or external regulators over company self-reporting. This is where third-party evaluators play an indispensable role in frontier AI development. When these third-party evaluators pre-establish clear standards for AI safety and transparency mechanisms that promote good stewardship of agentic AI developments, it naturally strengthens consumer confidence in the security of their products and closes the perceived capability-reliability gap of advanced AI end uses. So, what should be done? External accountability mechanisms provide legible information for legislators to enact policy that balances maintaining appropriate technological advantages on the frontier while mitigating the risk of unintended consequences. There are several existing public regulators that provide this service for other industries: the FAA for aviation, the WHO for healthcare, and even the IAEA for nuclear sciences. There are also private, non-profit institutions that play this role. The Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, or FINRA, is a self-regulatory organization for the securities brokerage industry. While not all financial services are required to become a member of FINRA, many still voluntarily join, as compliance with its transparency, conduct, and anti-corruption regulations provides several benefits, including expanded market access and access to dispute resolution forums. But perhaps more importantly, membership in FINRA provides a certain legitimacy from the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as trust from investors in the securities markets. Now, imagine if these brokerage firms could not only self-report the trustworthiness of their services, but could also determine what those standards were in adherence to a voluntary, loose framework of how to manage financial risk. Without being too reductive, I think that is essentially where the AI industry is right now. A patchwork of voluntary frameworks for AI safety, for example, from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and an over-reliance on company-reported threat intelligence. This has to change. Either through non-profit self-regulatory organizations akin to FINRA, or through federally funded research and development centers, third-party verification mechanisms are essential to strengthening consumer confidence and providing guardrails in an already intractable race to the next AI frontier. And there are many existing institutions that are up to the task: Model Evaluation and Threat Research, or Center for AI Safety, to name a few. All they need is an enforcement mechanism, whether it be through government-led legislation or non-profit self-regulatory organizations that use the consumer in-group, out-group method like FINRA. Hey, I only want to use a financial service or brokerage firm that's a member of FINRA, so other financial services and firms are going to want to join FINRA because that's how they get more business. The number of breakthroughs in AI innovation are increasing rapidly, But so is the risk of safety accidents and AI-enabled threats. Third-party threat assessment organizations will therefore be the most robust way to ensure that innovation benefits the former. This has been Bottom Line Upfront. Bottom Line Upfront is written entirely outside of Noah's professional capacity. His views are not necessarily representative of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace or Stanford University. Noah declares no conflicts of interest. All errors are his own. Thanks for listening.